In three, two, one. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Interviewing the Legends. I'm your host, Ray Shasho. Dave Kerzner, known for co-founding the band Sound of Contact with Phil Collins, son Simon, and as the keyboardist of the band Arc of Life with members of Yes, has released a new solo album entitled Heartland Minds Volume 1. It's an autobiographical concept album about leaving Los Angeles in the 90s after a breakup and driving cross country with a guitar to think, reflect, and write songs. The album is Kerzner's fourth solo effort, following up on his previous release, The Traveler. It's featured an ensemble cast of musicians, including Fernando Perdomo, Matt Dorsey, Durga McBroom from Pink Floyd fame, Elliott Randall, of course, from Steely Dan fame, Lyle Workman, and Joe Deninzon, our buddy here from Kansas, and of course, Stratus and more. This album was many years in the making, says Kerzner. I've worked on it on and off since the mid 90s. The stories and the songs are based on true events in my life when I was in my 20s. Now, 25 years, I'm thrilled to finally present the first volume to be heard publicly. Can't talk today. Dave Kerzner's Heartland Minds Volume 1 was released on CD and digital download on his Bandcamp page and other popular album downloads on October 18th. A 6-song EP from the album called Heartland Minds, The Eye, is currently streaming on all major platforms, as well as the album, of course. Please welcome multi-instrumentalist, singer, songwriter, producer, sound designer, and founder of the sound sampling development company, Sonic Realty Inc., Dave Kerzner, to Interviewing the Legends. Hello, Dave.
Hey, Ray. How you doing, man?
Is it Dave Squids Kerzner?
Well, yeah, that's my nickname, Squids. That's a whole
another story.
It's a whole story.
Well, we got to know.
Oh, well, okay. So the short version is I'm mainly a keyboard player, so I have my hands and feet on pedals and hands on keyboards like a squid.
Oh, okay.
So
yeah.
But it really has to do with a Monty Python skid, the whole long thing. Ironically, the origin of my nickname Squids dates back to when I first started writing the songs for this album, which was in the mid 90s in LA. By the way, I want to just aside there, you said the EP, the 6-song EP is streaming on all major platforms as well as the album. It is not. The album is not streaming on all major platforms.
Okay.
As an independent artist, and I strongly urge other independent artists and progressive rock artists and niche genres that aren't as mass popular to not put the whole album on streaming platforms, because whether people know it or not, artists know it, bands know it, the streaming platforms don't pay very well compared to selling an album on iTunes or something like that.
Right.
And it's like the farm, and it's very expensive to produce albums, or time consuming at any level. But at my level, with all the people you mentioned, it's expensive. And so it's everything in the music industry today is an experiment.
Yeah.
And so my experiment for this album and the previous album, The Traveler, is to, put some of the songs on all the platforms so that everybody can hear it. And then you reach people and hopefully they become a fan and they want more. And if they want more, they buy the album, which is really how it is. But, if you have control of your catalog, some people are assigned to a label and they have no control, and that's just how it is. But I have my own label, and I do distribution deals with and I have control of that. And I'm like, well, let's try this. And it seems to work because people do still buy the CD, buy the download. Good. So
yeah. Anyway. Yeah, the old traditional ways are out the window, aren't they? It's like you said, experimental, which makes sense. Yeah. And a lot of artists too, they don't want to put out an album. They'll just put out an EP,
I like albums though. I was thinking about that. I've seen artists do that, just singles. Yeah. to me, and maybe it's an old school way of thinking, I don't know, but I like an album. To me, that's like the weight of a body of work.
Mm-hmm.
And an EP is like, a taste of something, but it's or halfway to something, which can be a fun extra. But the album is kind of like the milestone of a band artist's work to me. It's like, oh, that album, I remember that year. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah. Well, I'm old school, so I'm with you on that one, man. This is very interesting concept. You were traveling around. Now, did you have a place to live in mind, or you didn't at that time?
No.
You did
Well,
not.
Here's what happened.
Okay.
So in the 90s, I was playing with an artist named Kevin Gilbert.
All right.
Had a band had a band called Toy Matinee. Had a band called Thud that I was the keyboard player for.
Right.
And then he was Sheryl Crow's boyfriend and co-writer for her first album that was the big hit.
Right.
And I met a girl who's very similar to Sheryl called Genevie on the album. That's not her real name, but
right.
And it didn't go very well with Kevin and Sheryl, and she kind of left him in the dust, short version. And goodbye. And sort of a stepping stone kind of a thing, story from his perspective. And when I met Genevieve, he was like warning me, like, dude, this is the classic, singer, songwriter, gonna leave you in the dust kind of thing. And I'm like, yeah, and I went for it anyway. And he was totally right. And I moved into her apartment in Santa Monica. She had a great apartment near the beach. So I moved in, I put all my gear in storage. And, she was very intense, wanted to like see if I was serious about potential marriage when we were first dating. I'm like, why not? I'm fine about it. Anyway, so she really like led me to think I was like the best, the one, all this stuff. And then when she got interest from a record label, did exactly the 180. And I was like, I'm out of here. And so I had to live. I could have stayed with a friend, but I thought, I'm just going to get out of here and think. And just, I'm a keyboard player mainly. I write on guitar. I'm not like, I hire other guitar players like Elliott Randall and Fernando.
Cool. Better
than me. But I took a guitar because it's easier to bring portably. And I was just like, I'm just going to write songs. I'm just going to drive. And I don't even know where we're going to go. I ended up driving cross country to New York and then to Florida. Think about maybe living somewhere else besides LA. No, I actually love LA, but it's a little expensive. And, people are kind of, I touch on this in the album, like a lot of like waiting around for some kind of validation or some kind of fortune and big break to happen. And I'm like, well, I didn't want to be a musician to be famous or rich. I mean, I don't mind but it's about the art. It's about like creating the music that's like the music that I like that made me want to do it. And so if I could do anywhere, and so that's, kind of part of it too, is traveling and sort of thinking about where I was going to land.
It's funny, all Prague artists that I've talked to, I bring a lot of Prague artists from overseas on my show because they're great. And they're not recognized here, from Norway, Germany, all, Anecdoten, RPWL, all these bands, that are, wonderful musicians, but, U.S. doesn't know them that well. And I was glad to see Hackett finally tour the U.S. recently, which was cool. Ross Jennings, which is very, very cool. And of course, Joe Deninzon, who mentioned that you guys were friends. He's been on the show many times. He's a great guy. I love Joe. He's awesome, man. Yeah, he's on this album. Yeah, which is great. And I'm so happy for him to be in Kansas, one of my favorite bands.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Maybe somebody will probably pick you up, Oh,
no, I'm not looking for that. I'm not looking for it at all. Yeah. I've had the chance. I have played with a variety of artists. And
I see that. Yeah.
But it's really, it's an interesting thing. I'll tell you a little story. This kind of a fun one. I've got all kinds of stories.
Good.
But one was crazy. So for many, many years, I was a keyboard player, producer, background person, background vocalist, never the front man. Okay. Yeah. And in 2009 and 2010, I had this band with Phil Collins' son, Simon Collins, that you mentioned, called
Simon was
Sound.
on the show. Yep.
And I really dug in deep in terms of every aspect of making this album called Dimension on.
Yep.
Writing music.
Excellent album. Excellent album.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And so really sunk my teeth into this album, and it had a lot of creativity, and it was very well received. And unfortunately, the band lineup was a little rocky, and it didn't stay together. I mean, I think every single person was out of the band at one point, including Simon, who's out of the band now.
Yeah.
But so it's sort of in limbo. But anyway, so after that, I was like, you know what? I'm not going to depend on anyone else. I'm just going to be the front man. I'm just going to put myself out front. You know, people seem to like my songs and my production, so I'm just going to do it after all these years. And I did New World, my debut album in 2014, and it was very well received. And we did a Kickstarter campaign, and it was very successful. And I was invited on Yes's Cruise to the Edge, which Joe played on, Kansas has played on, and of course Yes. And when I was rehearsing basically with the stellar band, the backing vocalists from Pink Floyd, Lyle McBroom and Durga McBroom, who are on my albums, and Matt Dorsey from Sound of Contact, Fernando Perdomo, Randy McStay, recently Porcupine Tree's touring guitarist. So a stellar band. And right when we're rehearsing for Cruise to the Edge, I get the offer to play with my good friend Francis Dunnery, who was in a band called It Bites, and he's played with Robert Plant and many others. He's fantastic. And he does a charity event in northern England, in Cumbria. And I had played it before with Steve Hackett from Genesis and France. But this year, that same time slot that I had to rehearse with my band, I could have played Led Zeppelin songs with Robert Plant.
Oh my God.
A bucket list, because I love it. And I choose between playing Zeppelin songs with Robert Plant just for one charity event, but still, versus playing my own music.
Right.
And of course I chose my own music. I mean, like I could have tried to squeeze both, but I didn't want to compromise my own music. And I think, you know, at that point, when you have to make such a decision, like, wow, who would turn down that as a keyboard player? My friend Pete Jones ended up doing it. And I was like, I watched it and I was like, oh, you lucky guy. But, you know, I realized all this time, the priority was what my forte is, because there's better keyboard players than me. Jordan Rudess runs circles around all of us, you know, but it's about the unique stamp of creativity that you can do, that I can do in writing and producing. That's something different than Jordan or anybody else. They don't do that. They do their thing and I do mine. And so that's you know, I'm not looking to, I got suggested by my friend Tom Lord-Alge to play with Peter Gabriel. And I actually was suggested by El Shankar, and I love Peter Gabriel. But, you know, truth be told, to spend a year playing someone else's music's just not my thing. I like to do music, you know, even if I'm not making as much money or not as seen or whatever. It's like, not about that. It's about contributing to the world something that I love, that I got from the music that I love.
Why can't you do both? I mean, they're all doing it. Neil Morris is doing a bunch of things, you know.
You mentioned my sample company, Sonic Reality. It's a sound development company. And our motto is sample everything. Okay. And it's a philosophy of life. So I've dabbled. I don't mind doing that. You know, I've guested with Steve Hackett, like playing a Genesis song for one song, or do a little stint, or do something like that. I don't mind, you know, having both. You're right. Both is fun. I mean, even playing classics or producing tribute albums and like, all right, like we did one for Yes, with Yes for their 50th anniversary with members of Yes. And I think Joe was on that. And, you know, just all these great musicians and just celebrating this music that I love, but then go writing music, because the world needs new music, in my opinion.
I agree 100%. Yeah. You're right about that, man. Let's talk about the new album, because I love it.
Thank you.
I'm going to go and talk to you about, you know, some of my favorite tracks. First of
Cool.
all, one of my favorites is "Eye of the Storm." I guess people have told you before some of the songs have sound like Pink Floyd in your voice. The voice sounds like Pink Floyd, not like David Gilmour. Eye of the Storm does, but I love that. I mean, obviously, Pink Floyd is gone. David Gilmour's getting old, so we still need that sound. So, even if it sounds a little bit like it, that's fine. You got your own style, so that's cool.
I,
Um,
now,
but
could I say about that?
yeah,
You know, I the thing is, so at one point, actually, someone had told me that I
right,
sound like Gilmour,
right.
and I really because I love David Gilmour. They
Hmm.
just said cross between David Gilmour and Peter Gabriel,
Right.
two of my favorites,
Hmm.
and I've embraced that as an anchor of like what's the foundation of my style as a vocalist. Obviously Simon Collins, he sounded a lot like his dad, Phil.
Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
to me made Dimension out. I was like, well, that's kind of like, what you remind people of. And it's okay to dip in. But the thing is, I've always been, and I think pretty much all the progressive rock artists and pretty much all artists have some anchor in their influences that shine
Yes.
through. And I'm I don't try to hide it. I
Hmm.
celebrate. Like for instance, if I sound a bit like Gilmour meets Waters and Pink Floyd, I'll get the backing vocalist from Pink Floyd to
Yeah.
join me.
Yeah, it's
And with
cool. Yeah.
the key is to make it unique. RPWL, they sound a
Right.
lot like
A
Floyd.
lot. Yeah.
Make it
Yogi
unique.
Yogi
Give
Lane's
it
cool. Yeah.
your own
Yeah.
voice, your own message. The stuff I write about, Pink Floyd would never write about.
Right.
They don't get romance and breakups, and if they
Exactly.
do, it's like beat to a pulp on a that's noted.
But that was very smart getting Pink Floyd backup singers to join you. I mean, that's awesome. You know, that's uh that's brilliant. Because they sound great on the album. They really do. Some of
Thanks.
the other songs, I mean, I love it. I love all the tracks, man. And of course you got Dreaming in LA. Love the lyrics, by the way. Uh don't want to be waiting for fortune and fame. See, that's perfect, and that's a perfect thing for LA. You described it perfectly about going to LA and hanging out and waiting for your big break, that's all that good stuff.
You have to have the goods.
Yeah.
That's what when you're in LA, you see everybody.
Yeah.
And I've seen people totally make it.
Hmm.
Greg Alexander from the New Radicals, I used to hang out with that guy. And then all of a
Right.
sudden I see him and I'm like, oh man, he's actually great. I had no idea. And then there's other people who just like, they just are so desperate to be famous or to have their big break and everything that it's sort of like, I'm like, hold on a minute, I need to like take time to create something,
Right. Right.
and the irony is that around so this was in the 90s, and where the record industry was still kind of good, but you didn't have all the independence and the
Hmm.
internet like you have now. It was a trade-off. Now you have total independence and the internet, and you can put your album out everywhere, but the music industry is like a sieve. It's
Yeah.
totally like difficult in other ways to people don't buy albums as much as they used to, so and they expect it for free on their streaming service. But the actual, I forgot why I was saying that. What were we talking about?
Well, making it in LA, and that kind of thing.
I was thinking like, if you're really talented,
Right.
you're an actor or you're a musician or you're not even just like, if you're a musician, but you're a musician for hire,
Right.
go to New York, go to a Nashville, go to a place, and you'll just being around, you'll get hired. You're ready to go. But
Yeah.
if you're a writer, we actually lived with Kevin Gilbert. We lived in a house that in Eagle Rock, that after we moved out, Matt Damon and Ben Affleck lived there, and they wrote Good Will Hunting in that house.
Oh, wow. That's very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they were already kind of successful, and you could write anywhere, but I think to me it's like you gotta have, if you're a writer,
Mhm.
songwriter,
Mhm.
writer, the goods. Once you have the goods, then go to a place like that and try to like, sell it and everything. But if you're just there and you get all wrapped up in the scene and hanging out and Sunset Boulevard and all these things, it's fun. But then like years go by,
right?
And, you have like a little demo that you made, and like you get turned down by all the labels, and you're like, all right. And then the things had shifted
Mm-hmm.
to, you know what, you don't even need a label's approval. You could actually make your own album,
Right.
even you could afford your own studio, you could record it. And now, of course, that's what I do. I work with a company, Multimedia, my company, Sonic Reality, and we create the tools that allow musicians to make music in the computer.
Cool.
We recorded Neil Peart, all kinds of Nick Mason, Floyd, Alan Parsons, and all these sounds, Genesis Studio, Reverb, do all that so that people can make their own albums, their own music, without even having a record deal. But of course, you got to get out there and either play live or make music. It's a lot of work.
Yeah. Promotion's everything too, man. I mean, I'm an author, and, people think writing a book and it's out there, it's published, it's on Amazon, that's it. Forget it. Your life just began, man. The promoting's the hardest part. I got a great book, man, called the Rockstar Chronicles, with 45 interviews that I've done. And it's got, Greg Lake, Emerson Lake, everybody from Emerson Lake and Palmer, is Johnny Winter, great interviews, but it's not selling. There's so much competition out there today to get recognized. And I do the best I can do to promote it, but it's just difficult. It's very, very hard. So
I'll buy it.
Okay, I appreciate it. Or I'll send it to you for free. I'll send you the link. I'll send you the ebook if you know. But it is on Amazon. The book itself is cool. I mean, it looks like the Bible. It's black and gold, and it's
great.
It's got a lot of great interviews in there, man. It really does.
I love those guys, by the way. I was friends with Emerson.
Keith Emerson, right?
Yeah. And I met Greg in the most beautiful way. And I actually, this is an interesting little story, if I may.
Sure.
So we played a show at a festival called Prague Stock.
Right.
In New Greg, and Joe was there.
Yep.
Joe does he's done it with Stratospherics, and he guested with me this time. And we played Sound of Contact Dimension Up. The keyboard I used was from EMIAP Museum, which is an incredible keyboard museum, and it was Greg Lake's. And so that was cool, and I love to use this keyboard anyway. But I actually met Greg Lake because his tech Andre called me when they were here in Miami at SIR and said, Nords, can you come down here and help program his Nord? So that exact Nord I programmed for Greg for one of his shows. And Greg, it's the first time I met him. He's so nice. And it was only Greg, his wife, and Andre, and like one other person.
Right.
And so he's like, sit down. And he did his whole show just for me. Like, what do you think? I'm like,
wow.
Well, I think King Crimson, ELP. I mean,
that's awesome.
One of his picks, and I still have it, and I use it. I thought, frame this pick, or should I use it? You know what I mean? Like that. It has mojo. So
yeah,
I love you guys.
Go to Wikipedia for Keith Emerson. There's a section in there of me and him talking about the revolving piano at California Jam and how he did everything. Do you remember California Jam, the first one?
I remember I don't remember.
You're younger than me. But he was on a revolving piano that was up in the air, and he went in circles. And we had the whole conversation. They put it on Wikipedia, which is really cool. Keith was a great guy too,
He actually introduced my first song on the radio as a solo art.
Yeah.
And the coolest thing, it was a 10-minute song called Stranded,
right.
Parts 1. And he was doing a radio show. I think it was Planet Rock in the UK.
Right.
And he was getting on there, and they asked him, he was playing ELP, and he was the deep cut guest DJ there with the other person. And they said, can you play something new that you like?
Mm-hmm.
And so he had guested on the album, and we were friends. And he said to me, he's like, you mind if I play it? And I'm like, I said, yeah. I said, but I mean, it's 10 minutes. You know, it's not really radio friendly at 10 minutes. Dave, listen, you know, I won't imitate him, but he's like, you know, when we did Pictures at 11, it was 10 minutes or whatever it was. And like, we insisted, and they played it. They did play it. And I'm like, all right. And so he did an intro. And I mean, you know, I'm a keyboard player primarily, growing up listening to Tony Banks, Jeff Downs, Rick Wakeman, Keith Emerson, Eddie Jobson. And so, you know, these are my heroes. So him to do that was just a complete, you know, I'll never, you know, it's just, I'll always be grateful.
Sure. New World, you had Steve Hackett on there too, right? Steve, Keith, Fernando, and Nick DiVirgilio.
Well, he's like one of the nicest guys in the music industry. And I, you know, so I played Simon and I, and also Francis, is Genesis Revisited 2 album. I guested on it. And then I went to his show here, and I'd split from Sound of Contact, and he knew, because it was Phil Collins' son, he knew Simon. And so he pulled me aside. Oh, and I had also helped him get his singer, Nad Sylvan, who's been singing with him.
I've had Nad on the show too.
Oh, okay. Oh, Nad. So,
I've had them all, man.
I recorded. I'm still working on it, imagine. And you heard that. And so, he got the gig. And so he wanted to thank me for that.
Right.
And also playing and sort of being an associate producer, whatever he called it, for his Genesis Revisited 2 album on some of the songs. And he said, listen, if you want, I would love to play for you, you know, return the favor. I'm like, dude, it was a favor to help you. You don't have to do anything. He's like, no, I'd like to, you know, if you want anything. And then he sat me down about going out on my own solo. And it was like a big brother or a fatherly lecture of like, you know, when I left Genesis, you know, it was difficult to, you know, really go out, but you have to build the confidence and just go for it. And I'm like, I can't believe I'm getting this speech. I mean, if I got that speech from my dad, you know, he'd be, you know, but like, this is Steve Hackett. I'm like, dude, I know the story. I'm a huge fan. You know, we all know that story. But to hear it in a very personal way was cool. It was like, all right, you know what? We're all just people. You know, they're legends. I know you interviewed the legends, but interviewed the legends, you realize we're all just people.
Exactly.
Our story, right? And he was saying, like, he knew that story of like, you know, go for it. And I'm with you. I support you. I will play on your record.
Very
on this.
Cool.
You know what I mean? And like you do it. Like he was, and I love that. I mean, just and even just the story, like when I tell people, because I know people who are like in that almost the same situation where they're like, should I just be the front man and just go for it? Like Matt, who was also in Sound of Contact, and he just released his first solo record.
That's right. And
he's, you know, you used to have him on your show. He's a great guy. And it's like to see someone just be like, all right, this is me, world. And not just, you know, I'm playing with cool people, great classic music. Well, yeah, that's fun. That looks great, you know, but, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if you can actually, you know, present what's unique about your perspective as an artist, whether it's big and famous or whether it's 10 people, actually, I admire that. It's a beautiful thing when people just make that effort and put it out there. You know, it's out there for people to discover, you know.
Well, Dave, you're doing a great job on PR, because I've been noticing you a lot, you know, out there. So the word about you is out. You know, I've been seeing you in a lot of different areas, you know.
I have a PR person, Billy James, Glass Onion. He's great. And, you know, I think, I actually think I need to improve that, if I'm honest, you know, and be able to know it. Because you're right. It is a lot of work.
It's a lot of work.
When you work on a book or you work on an album, that's already a a lot of work. I'm like, I'm tired. I'm done. Like, can't someone else just, but I'm willing to do whatever I can within
Hmm.
reason, get it out there. Fortunately, Prague Magazine likes me. They're doing a special thing this week.
Right.
And there's all these great Prague websites, the Prague Report,
Yeah.
and many others. And, you just kind of, and posting like, I don't know what, attention whore on Instagram. That part of me feels like, I'm so sorry for spamming you with this, but I did just finish an album. Yeah. So, here's another picture, here's another video, you
Yeah.
know, and it's okay, because I think, when I see it from artists I like Steven Wilson, I'm like, oh, here's a new thing from Steven
I hear
Wilson.
Steven everywhere, man. Another
Yeah,
guy. Him and Neil
he's
Morris. Neil Morris is another guy you hear
those
all
guys
over.
are
Yeah.
great at
Yeah.
promotion, prolific and everything. So
Yeah.
I look up to them, and I
Hmm.
just think, yeah, you gotta just like you said, or we both said, it's an experiment. The new music industry
Yep.
is an experiment, and you got to get out and push the car. And the other thing is this: not just the artists and the bands, the fans, and I don't
Hmm.
think they realize it. But like, and I was trying to explain it. It's sort of like awkward to even have to explain it, but like people don't really know. Like on Facebook and certain social media, if people don't comment, they just see it and they don't comment, it kind of stays invisible. The algorithms are designed to only show
Right.
what's popular past 22. It's not to
Yeah.
be popular until people comment. If people comment, I go, oh, this is, whatever, say anything, say hi. And to your favorite artist, like comment their posts so that they get seen,
Hmm.
because they don't get seen. And so there's so many little things like that you're up against. And I think that, what the people, and bless them, who are fans and supportive of niche genres like progressive rock, and their favorite artists, just need to understand is that if they're important, they're sharing, they're commenting, they're buying the album is hugely important for it to survive.
Hmm.
If people, or even going to festivals, if a festival is underattended, I've seen it, disappears. And this is a great festival. I'm like, well, you have to go. You're gonna, I'll
Yeah.
go next year. I'll go. There may not be one next year.
Right.
So it's fragile industry. It's a fragile world. But for those who are really into it, like me and you and others, it's a great thing. I mean, we wouldn't want to only get like the pop flavor of the week, or homogenous, people just chasing after the hit sound all the time and nothing sort of creative and different and eclectic, but that's, or only listening to the classics, the old
Mhm.
albums, like, and new music is important. So to me, I'm just like a big, wave this flag of like, look, let's all work together to keep
Yeah.
the role alive, because it's awesome.
Well, that's the good thing about Prague. You guys are like a family. You've always been. You've always stuck together and help each other out, which is awesome. There's no real competition there, I don't think. You know, there really isn't. And
We
I
cross
love Prague, man. I would do anything, and I'm trying hard to bring it up here, because I was a top 40 DJ back in the late 70s.
Oh yeah.
And radio was still good back in the late 70s. We had a nice mixture. We had Zeppelin on top 40. We also had disco. We had Donna Summer was huge, and we had new wave and all that stuff. But commercial radio is horrible now, and all they do when they play a hit, I mean a classic rock hit, or it'll be the same song over and over again. I don't know why they do that. They feel more comfortable doing that. They won't dig deep, and pull out some stuff that's never been heard before, like FM stations used to do in the old days, and it's a
Yeah.
shame. It's sad. If I had a radio station, man, it would be kick ass. Oh my God. All the people I've interviewed, all the new music, because there's a lot of great new music out there. Like your album, there's a lot of great prog artists with new music out there. I just wish it would happen. And
It kind of is. It's just sort of about even shows like this reaching people,
right,
anything word of mouth, where there are millions of people. I see them come out to see Genesis or
right.
Pink Floyd band or whatever. I'm like, all right, so you like this style of music? I mean, really like it, like I do. It's like, but do you know that there's artists still making music like this, and you
Exactly.
can't
Yeah.
really wait around for a new David Gilmour album.
Hmm.
You know, he's sort of you said old, but to me it's not about that. It's like his prime was when they did, Dark Side of
Yeah.
the Moon, Wall, and
Right.
and and I like all the Pink Floyd stuff and his solo records, but like he's not hungry for anything right now. Like he's
No.
kind of, some of them are retired, some of them
Yep.
kind of still put out albums, but they don't have that fire. And I'm no spring chicken, but I still have that hunger and drive and something to say. This album has been, stewing for 30 years, with a story to tell. And it was a big story for me, as we said. It's like, what do you do when you're, like in a place like LA and you've been screwed over in a relationship, you've been rejected by record labels, I was in different bands. I was in the Eels for like 2 minutes, and her band, I had to choose between the two, and I chose the wrong door, and all these different things, Kevin Gilbert. And you think, like,
Yeah.
what matters is me and my just being grateful to be alive, for one thing, because you
Yeah.
have a
Especially today. Yeah.
family, and just a good friend of mine, Randy McStein, who's also on the record,
Hmm.
said he's a young guy. He's like, the goal is to make as much art as you can and put it out there before you're gone. Just
Yeah.
make and it's not so much about quantity, but but it's about quality and getting. Okay, Wayne Dyer had a great quote.
Yeah. Remember
Uh,
him? Yeah.
don't die with your music still inside you.
That's good. That's good. I like that.
You know?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it's a metaphor for whatever you have inside you, but literally for me, it's the music inside. It's like, look, I have a responsibility
Hmm.
to these song ideas that have happened over the years to, like,
Hmm.
take them to fruition and put them out there for people to enjoy. And the
Yep.
other thing is, you obviously, I'm older and mature. When I was in my 20s, who knows what I was had to transform my thinking from, like,
Right.
do I just want MTV at the time?
Yeah.
All these things, or do I really want to just kind of offer the world something?
Hmm.
And is it about me? Because, like, so many of my friends have won Grammys since then, all that stuff, and I didn't play that game. I might submit it this time, not even this year, but it's for next year. But still, it's like, well, it's not about that. What it's about, the most important thing, it's not about ego gratification. It's not about people telling you you're great and all that stuff, or even being in the polls. I've been in some of the polls, but it's like, polls. Like, it's
Yeah.
so subjective. What it's about is reaching people and making a difference in
Hmm.
their life, because that's what it did for me. So
Sure.
when they say commute to work and I listen to your whole album and it just makes my day, like
Right.
that, it's about that. It's not about me. It's about that connection. That's how I feel. It should be. It's like, look, you're making something. You're going to all that effort, and now it's translated in someone's car, or they're at the gym and they got AirPods on, or whatever it is, or it lifts them up if they're sad.
Hmm.
Or I had one person tell me that his wife who died, her favorite song was "Closer to You"
Hmm.
from Contact album. And so he asked me if he could play it at her funeral. And I'm like, well, of course you don't have to ask my permission, but let me do a version of it for you specifically for you. So I sang it and played keyboards, and I gave it to him, and his whole family thanked me and everything. I'm like, I mean, if it meant that much to you, I'm honored and sad, but honored to be. I mean, it's just like, it's deep
Yeah.
sometimes how it
It is.
reaches, and that's why you got to do it.
That's right. You know how much music saved military guys, in the foxhole, especially, in the Vietnam War, with Hendrix music. I think I talked to Dave Mason. He was talking to me about that because he's a big advocate of the military and all the guys and everything. But yeah, they would listen to music in the foxhole, waiting
That's
around.
how important it is.
Yeah.
Musicians, music artists, recording artists, performing artists, it's like your vibration doctors.
Yeah.
You're
Sure.
giving out vibrations, because music sound is vibration.
Yeah. Right.
Lifting people up, getting them pumped, giving them hope, giving them something to relate to connect with. That's why I'm very into the lyrics and everything, because the lyrics on my album, especially the newest one, Heartland Minds, are very relatable. It's autobiographical, personal one I've done. But in terms of Prague, I don't write about necessarily like mythical creatures, although there are, but not like wolfhounds. It's not so obscure that you can't go, oh yeah, I've been in that situation,
right?
And you can say, yeah, you could use like a good breakup song is always good for if you're in that situation. You're like, yeah.
I want to go back to the album, some other tracks. Of course, Genevie. We all know what that's all about. It's a beautiful track. Back to One. I got a kind of Elliott Randall's on that one. I've had Elliott on the show also. He's a really nice guy. The electric guitar on that is great, by the way. And I got a vibe of kind of Dire Straits and Alan Parsons on that song, which was really cool, And let's see, Push Me Out. That was kind of a proggy track. The thing about that song, I wanted more. It was a short song. I think it was like a minute and 24 seconds, something like that. But Push Me Out kind of sounded yes a little bit, and of course I wanted more. But you made it so short. Why'd you make it so short?
That song. The funny thing is, some of the songs on most of them, well, pretty much all of them have roots going back to the 90s.
Right.
Were not finished in one way or another.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
That song was actually an instrumental called, the working title was Post Genevieve.
Okay.
And it was like something at the end. You know the song Head Over Heels by Tears for Fears?
Yeah.
And at the end, they have this little tag called Broken.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, that's one of those bits that you actually say, I wish there was more of that, actually.
Yeah,
it's really,
exactly.
That's what Post Genevieve was. It was like, and it was an instrumental, which I should still do. Maybe I'll do it on the second volume too, because it worked as an instrumental. But then I was just messing around with Matt Dorsey on it and started and coming up with these lyrics. And I wanted to work in lyrically. There was something funny about Genevieve that, and it's sort of almost like a cliche LA sort of yoga chick kind of thing where
right.
It would always say namaste, which I don't have a problem with it. It's very nice, sweet, whatever. But she would say namaste as like a get out of jail free card. Like if she was flirting with somebody and there was a little cross the lines, and I'd say something, namaste. what are you talking about, namaste? Like you're cheating. But anyway, so
I like that.
I wanted to put namaste in somehow without like forcing it in, and it just was like, oh yeah, that works in this context. This kind of yes-ish run-on sentence thing or whatever. And I got Durga McBroom from Pink Floyd we talked about, but to sing a high John Anderson type part.
Right.
And that was because normally she'd be doing like, Great Gig in the Sky style thing.
Yeah.
But this was like, all right, let's try Durga here. And then Matt did the percussion, and it just ended up becoming a fun song. But it was always meant to be this kind of segue song, because the album, as you know, it's a concept album. The songs run each other and they tell a story. And sometimes the story is very short. And in this case, it's kind of like what I was saying, which is you changed your tune and you pushed me out.
Right.
In a kind of a comical way, because the lyrics are funny on some of the songs.
Man. Now here's the name of a song that, man, you could sell this to some important country artists, because When the Heart Sinks Like a Stone, right? Yeah, I could hear some legendary country artists singing, using that title. That's a great title. Wow. Is Devin Powers, is he playing guitar on that?
Yeah,
Okay.
Devin. Now, the interesting thing about Devin is I've known Devin for a long time. He also dated Genevieve right before I did.
Oh man.
He brought her on a date to my show. I was playing
Uh-huh.
with Kerzner at the Troubadour, and that's when I didn't know she was with him, and I didn't know him yet, and that's where we kind of had our beginning. That she's
All
like,
right.
oh wow, first sight, and years later, he's like, I I'm the one who brought Genevieve to the show, and I'm like, and then we became friends. He's great. I mean, he does all the Naked and Afraid music and like all this TV music and stuff.
Really?
But he has
Huh.
an incredible guitar collection and all this gear. And so I was like, we got to do something. So this was appropriate because it was just kind of a fun, like, oh, we got to get you on this album at least. But Fernando plays on that, Fernando Perdomo.
Hmm.
And it is a bit, actually, the song itself is a little bit country, just a
Yeah.
little
Yeah.
with progressive rock, if you even want to call it that. I like to be eclectic.
Yep.
And so sometimes we'll go into space rock, and sometimes we'll borrow from other styles, classical, jazz, or even country, but in a way that I would like. Some country, I like the style of acoustic, folksy stuff, but the lyrics are just too cheesy for me, too on the nose,
I
too
know.
corny.
I know.
Yeah.
The lyrics. Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, dude,
I
like
agree.
so. But to be able to actually give it some weight lyrically, with when the heart sinks like a stone, like a metaphor. And I also quote in that song a song called "Leaving Miss Broadway," which Kevin wrote about Cheryl. And
Hmm.
so it was never released. We played it live. It's on a live album, but the studio version was never released. And I actually wrote the Mellotron part for it, and I thought, oh yeah, I asked permission from the estate and everything, and they were cool with it. I said, I gotta like make that parallel. This is another Miss Broadway, and that represents it in a fun poetic way
Right.
about her being similar to Cheryl, without saying. I don't
Huh.
normally say in the book or anything that's Cheryl, but it is, you know.
Yeah. We were mentioning who do you think, what band do you think was progressive Southern, progressive Southern rock band? Who do you think was
Kansas, Dixie Dregs.
Allman Brothers?
Oh, Allman Brothers. Yeah. You want to
Yeah.
call it
And he even,
Prague?
yeah, they hated that name. They hated to be classified as a Southern rock band. They hated that, especially Dickie Betts. And yeah, they even mentioned they were more prog, than a pure Southern rock band because they're instrumentals, and I mean they were definitely all over the place. A little bit of jazz, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, this blew me away. Dirty Girl. Okay. First of all, it sounds like the Eagles, and then it turned into a little bit of the Beatles. Randy was on that, right? Randy
Yeah.
McStein.
He does a weird sound effect that goes throughout the song. It's
I love
mainly
the lyrics. Now, was that a true story?
yeah, it was. I exaggerated a little bit, embellished it, but essentially, I kind of made this. So I got in the car and started driving without a plan, and
Right.
I realized like certain areas there's stretches of land where there's nothing, and you do have to kind of know where you're going if you want to have a place to sleep. You have to plan a little. So I ended up, I think it was in Utah, and at night, and I was like, all right, let me just, we didn't have cell phones even then or whatever. So I was just like, let me see if I could find a motel and hotel in this town. I found a few, they were booked up. So I went to this little bar and grill. I called it the Pit Stop Bar and Grill. It wasn't called that. It was probably even like a Bob's Big Boy. Nothing as exciting as what I said in the song. But anyway, this waitress, I asked her, and she's like laughed and said, you're not going to get a hotel, whatever. And she was kind of flirty and cute. And so she said, you can just stay at my place.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, sure, why not? I mean, of course, that's pretty dumb because, like, even for both, I'm a
Yeah,
stranger, and for me,
exactly.
and we'll take your liver and your, you know. So I went there, and it was fine, but like there was this house with Jesus pictures all over, and very kind of like conservative looking house. Her parents were home, but her little brother was there, just like in the song. And he was kind of like, I'm gonna tell, you know, kind of like, and she wanted to fool around because she was like, I think like maybe I got the impression it was a strict religious household where there's no sex before marriage.
Right.
And she was like 18, 19, and I was like mid 20s, maybe she was 20, and she was like, I'm getting some, and I'm like, oh well, you know, okay. And it was sort of soon, and I was like, ended up in a sleeping bag outside her house. I said, if you want, you know, but the thing about it, I make it like a punishment in the song, but in reality, it was so beautiful out. I had never seen anything like it. No light pollution, so you saw all the stars.
Yeah.
Like, and also I wanted to get away from the little brother. So I'm like, you want to go outside? She's like, no. And I'm like, do you mind if I go outside? So I did. And I played guitar and the stars and everything. It was a weird night, but made for a great song. Funny story about this actual event.
That's great. I love it. You know, you're full of song lyrics when you talk. Driving without a plan. You just said driving without a plan. That sounds like a song.
Yeah.
You know, I could pick a lot of excerpts from this interview and find all kinds of lyrics, man. You know, you're just full of lyrics.
Like experience, you know, like if you're writing about something, I've written about sci-fi things, and it's fun. It's a great challenge, and I like to create stories and fictional things. But when you've got your own experience to draw upon, you know exactly how it feels to be sad, to be mad. And so I go through those in a very, very vulnerable, honest way, all the ranges of emotions and the adventures that I went on. And there's more. So that's why it's volume 1. Yeah. So there's more to that. All these cool little adventures that, you know, have hopefully taught me something, and that I can convey some inspiration onto someone else, or at least like in the case of Dirty Girl, I mean, there's a lot of comedy in there. So at least people would make them laugh, you know. My girlfriend loves that song. She just thinks it's hilarious. You know? Willing to do the
That's funny. Well, my book is volume 1, so maybe you'll be in volume 2.
Oh man. So, you know,
yeah, man. I want to put a Prague section in volume 2 for sure, because I've interviewed a lot of Prague guys. Well, a lot of the other songs on the album, like Too Far Gone, Love It, To the Eye, they kind of remind me of Pink Floyd a little bit. I love it. And again, To the Eye is too short. I wanted that one to be longer too.
It's a reprise of the Storm.
Exactly. And Manic Calm was interesting because it reminded me of 90s grunge sound moments on the guitar. You know, it really did.
Well, that, you know, by the way, I'm generally transparent about my influences, and you hear a lot, especially
why not?
My biggest albums. But this album, I was particularly diverse and gratuitous with it for a poetic and artistic reason.
Right.
The music that you're listening to is my like a reinterpretation of the kind of music I would have been listening to. So I would have been to the Eagles, Steely Dan, Pink Floyd, and I wanted to convey this is road trip music. This is the kind of, you're on a long journey, so you can listen to albums or a mix tape for, you know, a playlist. And, you know, so for instance, in Too Far Gone, there's a little bit of like a Dust in the Wind vibe, finger picking, and of course Joe plays on it and does a beautiful solo. And you will hear intentional nods to nostalgic classic rock, but always in kind of like you put it all in a blender and it comes out as something new with a unique story in the lyrics. And that to me is kind of like, I like that. I mean, some people want me or artists to be completely original, something new I haven't heard before. I'm like, I would take that as a challenge. I would do that. I would be, all right, let me just do something totally out there.
Yeah.
And sometimes when people do that, it's like, okay, it's out there, but I don't want to listen to this. And other times, like let's say Bjork is totally out there and it's unique and it's amazing. And so, so I admire that. But, and I would do that at some point, but my kind of thing is you go into it and it reminds you of things and it's familiar to you. And it's actually doing something kind of, in my opinion, needed. You said it earlier, keeping it alive. You're keeping rock and roll and classic rock and elements of Prague alive and still going, but with something new. You're never going to hear the Eagles do a song like that. Really, you're not going to hear Floyd sing about those things.
Yeah,
all those things. It's funneled through my point of view. As a person,
I hear other bands and other legends in every interview that I do. Every album that I review, I hear other music in it. And hey, the Beatles did it. You hear Little Richard, Chuck Berry, R&B, and all the early Beatles stuff. So yeah, it happens. It's a good thing, in my opinion. Excuse me. Got choked up. Also, I gave the album 5 stars, by the way. I loved it. I thought it was a great album. It's a great album. I'm looking forward to the second one, the follow-up. I wanted to talk to, I had Simon and Kelly on the show.
Oh, great.
We had a fun time. And of course, E-Molecule. And have you listened to the new album at all?
I have, yeah.
Yeah.
Some of those I had heard because they were from Kelly for our potential second Sound of Contact album. I'm really happy, especially for him, because he kind of left Sound of Contact before we released Dimensionaut and is less known. And also, like, all those guys, all 4 of us had a lot inside us that wanted to come out and just needed the right vehicle. I mean, obviously, I don't know if all 4 of us, maybe we all agree on this, I don't know, but like it would have been nice to have a whole career of albums together. Certainly the fans would have liked that, and I would have liked it, but that wasn't possible. So if that's not possible, at least things like collaborations between myself and Matt and Simon and Kelly are happening.
That's good.
And E-Molecule is, and the funny thing is that it's not really my cup of tea, actually, to be honest. Like that. Well, let's put it this way: for better or worse, if I was involved in that album, or if that was a Sound of Contact album, I would have drastically changed it, and sprinkled my keyboard. What I mean? Tony Banks chords here and there and whatever. And it's like, okay, but and even Dimensionaut, actually, I heard them say this. They may even said it in your interview. I don't know. I heard an interview with them where they're like, they've got, they had the 2 of them that had the concept of a Dimensionaut.
Yeah.
Their sci-fi ramblings and poetry and they came to Matt and I like, we want to do an concept album about Dimensionaut. And Matt and I were like, well, can we just do something, like not a concept album for our first album? No, we must. And I was like, all right, so if we're going to do that, here's how I see it. And I kept offering material and offering story parts, romance, all these elements that were never in the original. I didn't even know what their original vision was because I did so much infusion of my keyboard player point of view and the sort of writing style that, when you hear E-Molecule, what I like about it actually is I'm like, okay, that's their vision. That's their style that I kind of stifled. And maybe for the better for the people that love Dimensionaut, because they're like, oh, I love it. Sounds like Genesis, it's keyboardy, whatever. Yeah. But it's like, like Kelly, for instance, is more of a heavy metal guy. There's a bit of that on Dimensionaut. It's actually some of my favorite parts that get like heavy, but we didn't get that heavy. Here, it's like they had free reign, get heavy as you want, get, dark as you want, conspiracy theories, just go for it. So as a bro, as a friend, as a space brother or whatever, I'm proud of them. And I'm happy that they had that artistic outlet for that after all this time.
Yeah.
But I don't reach for it to listen to it per
Right.
se. For me, I'm a little more, I like
Yeah.
different, less dark and heavy for me.
The interview's on YouTube if you want to listen to it. All my interviews are on YouTube. So
I think I might have. I don't know.
We did a Zoom as well. Yeah.
Like, I kind of, I was like,
you also hung out and did an album with Arc of Life, which, Billy gets into a lot of different projects, man. He really does, besides Yes. And I want to mention Fernando too. I had Fernando on with Carmine Eppies because he's another guy that's everywhere. I mean, everywhere. He really is. He's got so many different projects that he works on. It's amazing. And, and he's a fellow Cuban too. My mom was Cuban. So, yeah, he's a pretty cool guy. In Arc of Life, the song Just in Sight, that was a hit. If it was back in top 40 days, that would have been all over the radio. That was a great song.
Yeah, the irony is that as we were talking about Sound of Contact, where I had a big hand in everything, Arc of Life is the extreme opposite of that. It's the least involvement. They asked me to be their keyboard player because I'm friends with them.
Right.
And it was after they already had the first 2 albums written. So I didn't write anything on it. I didn't engineer and do any of the things that I'm actually really good at. I didn't even sing on it. But then Billy's played with me for the Traveler tour stuff that we did. And that's where he really got to listen to my music, because we've been friends for decades, but like, he was like hearing it every time we played and getting to it. It's like, we got to get you to sing on and write on the next Arc of Life. And I'm like, hey, if you want. But it's a beautiful thing, again, in terms of maturing, learning over time, about the independence thing. So here I am in a band with pretty much like 3/5 of the band is in Yes, currently in Yes.
Yeah.
I love Yes.
Yep.
And it's an honor that they asked me, and it's cool, and you get Prague points for it, I guess, to some people, and whatever, reach more people. But I don't feel like I have to push myself on the band to write or to get my songs in there or get anything out of there. I'm there. They asked me to be in their band, so whatever they want me is totally cool. And maybe I should have even dealt with Sound of Contact that way. Been like, hey, I'll just write some stuff on your stuff, and I'll contribute a few songs, and not like put all my eggs in that basket, and put all my eggs, or most of my eggs in my own basket, my solo stuff. So that's what I do now. And it allows me to just be like, well, yeah, I'll do whatever's appropriate and whatever fits in that. If they ask me to write, I'll write. But, I don't feel any need. I don't have any needs. Like we were saying earlier, like I don't need to be a keyboard player for band or tour or get exposed. I don't anything. All I need to do is sit down and do the work, which is still a lot, to do Heartland Minds Volume 2, the next project, this, that, whatever. And that's, and that's within my control. So it's a beautiful thing, because I just like, okay, I'm overseeing this. So I'll get, and all those guys would play on my album. They do, John Davison and Billy Sherwood. I haven't worked with Jay as much, but he's a buddy, and so, it's kind of like, yeah, I mean, to me, it all starts from the song. You have to have the song. There's no point if like you just go, well, I got this super group, these guys together. Like, okay, what are the songs? Are they going to be songs? Because it's not an automatic for anybody. I don't care who you are. Pete Townsend, Paul McCartney. They wrote some of the best songs ever, but it's not an automatic that you put them in the studio and the songs are going to be just as good. You still have to always reach for the greatness. You reach for like something magical to happen and connect in a way that's going to speak to people. But when you've got that, and I'm sitting on time, I'm always sitting on a lot of material, which I'm grateful for. But to me, it's like, okay, let's make an album. Why? Because we have material. We have songs that we need to execute and finish. So, with Arc of Life, I even had like a super group that I was going to put together with Steve Hackett, me, Ray Wilson.
Oh
And like,
man.
it was going to be great, but it was kind of concept.
Yeah.
And I said yes. But ironically, I'm like, oh, so it's an oasis. Am I going to sit there and like work on that and then have it be like maybe fall apart or need money or nobody has the time? Or am I going to do something I have control over? I mean, I still kind of want to do that at some point, maybe. It's like, and same thing with Arc of Life. It's like, well, if they say, let's get together, we're going to write, we'll do it. But if I'm going to sit there and I'm going to write songs for Arc of Life, I think, well, I could write my next album, actually.
Yeah, I see what you mean. I see what you mean. You know, you were about 15 minutes from my house last year, and I didn't go to the show. I don't know what happened. I should have. Rosfest. You know, I live next to next to Sarasota, where the show was, and Adrian Belew was there, who I love. Adrian, he was on the show. Jerry Harrison of Talking Heads, John Anderson was there, and you were there at Rosfest, and I didn't go to that. I don't know what happened that day.
Now maybe there is. I don't know if they're going to do another one.
I know. I haven't heard anything yet. You know, I did write to them, and I wanted to see what was going on with them. And you finished Prague Stock recently, right? Rachel Flowers, who's a big favorite. Dave, I know Dave Bainbridge. He lives in Baltimore. I'm from Baltimore originally, and of course Patrick. Patrick was there. I love Patrick, man. And also Unitopia, who I'm trying to get an interview with here recently. What was Prague Stock like?
Well, first of all, Patrick Moraz, for those who don't know, you probably know, keyboard player
blues.
In my show.
Right.
Heckled the show and said, what did he say? Incredible, or something like that. And then he got the whole audience to say, he got up and you got 1, 2, 3. Oh, unbelievable. That's what it was. Unbelievable. And I was like, and at first I just thought it was some dude like yelling, like, oh. Dude, that's Patrick Moraz. It was so bizarre. And at the end of the show, he came up to the stage to shake our hands. I mean, that was like, it's one of those little moments. I always say, you don't need to have these kind of validations to be happy with who you are and what you're doing. But it is kind of a fun bonus for someone like Keith Emerson to want to introduce your song on his radio.
Sure.
And Patrick Moraz, it's like an honor that he loved it, that he stayed for the whole. He was the first one there. It was so weird. Like what happened, the whole story is kind of funny. I was in the hotel where the artists were staying, and he was checking in. And I've met him before. We know each other, but I didn't want to bother him. You know, and it would normally be like, "Hey, Patrick, good to see you. How's it going?" Blah 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 blah. What'd you do on this song on relay or whatever it is? And so instead, I was respectful and cool and just nodded and said, "Hey, how's it going?" And walked by. And then he came to me and he's like, Dave, I love your music. I love the live. How did you do that keyboard part? I'm like, did someone put you up to this? Like, what? Like, you care about my song and you're asking how I did something? I'm
That's
like,
funny.
And so he's a fan, and he really is legitimately a fan. So like when we did our show, he was the first one there. We took a picture in the audience waiting for us to play and stayed to the end. I was like, wow, this is so cool. I mean, what for us prog nerds, it was like a total bonus, like think of yourself as a kid thinking like, if you could tell the kid, like, someday, you're going to work with Steve Hackett and respect your music and enjoy it. And I'm like, well, that's the dream.
Yeah. I said the same thing to myself with all these interviews I've done, because, I grew up, in my room listening to the album, going to concerts, and dreaming, just idolizing all these guys. And now they're all on my show, which is incredible. It's a dream come true. It really is, man. Patrick's such a cool guy. He was on the set of Predator. Did you know that?
No.
Yeah, with Arnold Schwarzenegger. He was supposed to be doing some of the music, I think, for the movie. And then he got to hang out with Arnold and everybody. And he told me some stories about that. He's got some great stories,
Yeah, he's very nice too.
Yeah. He's a little underrated, I think. I think he should have been, I think Relayer is probably my favorite Yes album of all times. It's a masterpiece, it really
Yeah,
is.
brilliant.
Yeah.
You know who's underrated though?
Who's that?
It's Dave Bainbridge's partner, Sally Minier's
Sally?
boss, Carrie Minier
Yeah.
from Gentle Giant.
Yeah.
Incredible keyboard player.
Hmm.
As Patrick and Rick Wakeman and all those guys up there.
Right.
Like, listen to Gentle Giant. This guy was just incredible. And he actually came to our show to see Sally play because she opened for us. Dave and Sally, Dave Bainbridge and Sally opened for us when we did a UK tour. And he came to see his daughter play.
Mm-hmm.
And he's our show. And Sally told me, it's like, he must really like you because he never stays.
I got to get him and Sally back on the show. I haven't had Sally on the show yet, but Dave, I don't know what Dave's in Baltimore. I'm from Baltimore, and it used to be a great city, but it's not as great anymore. I'm just wondering, it's funny that he's from Baltimore. I don't know.
Well, he's British.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is he from Baltimore? He lives
No,
in Baltimore.
no. He's not from Baltimore, but he's living there. I think it's because of his wife, I guess. Yeah, I think she was from there or something like that. All right, here's your final question, Dave. And I get some really interesting answers. Okay. If you had a Field of Dreams wish, which is one of my favorite movies,
Me too.
To perform or collaborate with anyone from the past or present, who would that be? You can create a whole band if you want. Just don't say Paul McCartney, because I get that a lot.
Well, yeah. Paul or John. But, I could list David Gilmour, Tony Banks, Peter Gabriel. I would love to, but I have to say, and this is kind of maybe unfun, but it's honest. I'm not greedy. I've been very, very fortunate to work not only some of my favorite musicians, but in a very a way that wasn't just a novelty, was actually made musical sense, like having Hackett play on Stranded. It fits. It just, and I've had my bucket list plenty, or Elliott Randall, I love Steely Dan.
That's so cool.
And, so I wouldn't even ask for more, I think, but yet I love all those bands. And so don't get me wrong, it would be a thrill to work with any of them. I think, okay, I will say this. Actually, now that I'm really because I try to just not be the thrill and novelty of it being the bragging rights or whatever. It's not about that. What I really love to do is work with any of those artists, Paul McCartney, Tony Banks, David Gilmour, in a context not just hey, I played some keys with so-and-so, but actually where I was co-producing and co-writing, and they trusted me, where they said, you know what, I've listened to your music and I like your angle, I like where you're coming from. Let's collaborate and and trusting me enough to go, that idea is good. You got I remember hearing that Paul McCartney was working with Nigel Godrich, who's one of the best producers. And I think Paul was saying, he was harsh. He was like, yeah, that sucks. Next, all that kind of stuff. It's sir, Paul McCartney. And it's but he respected him because it's look, you need someone who's really gonna help, mold something into something that's, gonna be the best it can be. And so since you can, as you pointed out, in my music, have my Beatlesy moments and my, any of those artists, I could have a full-on Beatlesy moment and be like, all right, Paul, let's write a classic Paul McCartney album that's just, got the goods. Let's go for it. And I think I could do that. Or with Roger Hodgson from Supertramp, but I haven't reached the level to where they come to me and want that. So, but that I would want to do is kind of help them make a great record again, a really as great as they're the ones in their heyday. That would be fun. But to be able to just say, oh, here's my super groove. I got Bill Bruford on drums. I got, that's just play. It's fun. but I've dabbled in that, and
Yeah.
just to be able to say whatever, it's not about that. It always comes back to the more important thing, which is the song and the music itself.
True.
And whoever you're working with, whether it's someone from a famous band, like let's say Elliott, or Fernando, who does the electric sitar solo, which is Elliott will say is just as good. It's also good. Fernando's not as known, but it's like, well, you level the playing field, but it is fun. I'll just say one thing. So I do sample libraries.
Right.
Mason and Alan Parsons. I did a sample session with both of them, and they hadn't worked together since Dark Side of the Moon. We were sampling Mason's drums, and Alan was engineering, and I was producing.
Yeah.
And there was one moment where Nick was in the control room, and he said, "Is that all right, Dave?" And then Alan turns to me, he's like, "Yeah, is that all right, Dave?" And I'm like,
oh gosh.
"Who, me?"
That's crazy. That's crazy.
Little things like that, like, pinch me. I can't believe this is happening. But again, we were just doing samples. It's not like we were going, all right, let's make a killer record together. Alan Parsons meets Pink Floyd. Let's do it. It wasn't that.
That's cool, though. Yeah.
Yeah,
Alan put my interview with him, like front page of his website. So that was cool. I said, wow, thanks, man. Yeah.
Deserve it.
Yeah, that was cool. He's a guy. He's a great guy. I like Alan Parsons a lot.
Yeah.
Well, what's next for Dave? Are you going to work on the part 2 of this album, or when is that going to come out?
Well, in my, you praised it, but actually I would say I'm fairly, my PR is limited. Like, I don't do big world tours or any of that kind of stuff.
Right.
I little things like not little, but like specific things like festivals or cruise.
Right, the cruise. Yeah.
I like to time my releases around, those promotional opportunities.
Okay.
As a business, because you do it as a music artist in a band, you have to think a little bit as a business, like you said, promote, do things. So I'm like, all right, so I will be in front of thousands of Prague fans and music lovers there. Many of them know who I am already, because I've done Cruise the Edge like 5 or 6 times already.
Wow.
We always knew people to reach, and of course something to sell, which I didn't actually have, which is kind of a bummer. You can't rush the art. I didn't have my album, the current one, to sell in time for Prague stock, but it's still fresh. It's out now, and promoting it, then. So I plan to promote the second volume on Cruise to the Edge, which is March, April next year. So it'll probably come out February. You'll start hearing it.
Awesome. Is the album finished or not yet?
It's mostly written, and largely a lot of it's recorded already.
Okay. Wow.
There's even maybe a third volume potentially, and even maybe more than that. One thing I was thinking about doing is, since it's kind of a departure from my sort of keyboard centric style, it shows a little bit more of my classic rock influences and guitar based music and sort of folksy rock, is make it a series when I want to do that kind of road trip music. It just be like, doesn't always have, it started with this driving with no plan or the guitar, but it could potentially just continue on, because I have all sorts of music and stories and within that style. And I don't want to completely like make people think I'm not going to do traditional Prague and keyboards and all that stuff. It's like, no, I still will. But maybe this series will be about like, Heartland Minds. Okay, so he's doing another kind of folksy rock, eclectic rock album. Maybe. The other thing I'm doing, though, I haven't announced it publicly, but I'm not terrible at keeping secrets, is I'm doing a road trip covers album that'll supplement. I don't know when that'll come out. Maybe this year in time for Christmas.
Wow. Where you already got the music picked out for that? Some
Pink Floyd and some, all these different things. But, so that could be an ongoing thing too, as a side project, to be like, all right, here's our take on this song or that song. I think we did Lucky Man, that'll probably be on there.
Nice.
And a song I did with the late great David London from Big Train.
Mm-hmm.
We did a Floyd song together. So
Oh, he was so great, man. He had the very distinctive Prague voice, and
amazing.
I had those guys on the show and with the new singer, and I felt so bad, because the guy was incredible. That was a big loss, wasn't it?
It was,
You
and it's
know,
super nice too.
yeah.
He sang backing vocals on A New World, and he was so nice.
Mm-hmm.
It's very, very sad. Yeah.
Mm.
But we did a cover together, and there'll be some Rush on there. It's
Fantastic.
eclectic.
Oh, that's gonna be
Um,
great. I'm gonna promote the hell out of that, man.
uh,
We'll have to get you back when the album comes out,
but
to talk about that one. Because I love covers. I really do. And everybody's doing them, because you guys enjoy doing them. They're fun, you know, they're a lot of fun. I just talked to Malcolm Bruce yesterday, Jack Bruce's son, and they just put out Heavenly Cream, which is kind of an acoustic version of all the greatest hits by Cream. But there's a lot of great artists on that, Pete Brown. A lot of them have passed away. Ginger Baker's on it, some great artists on that. And of course, they're all Cream covers, but they did a good job with it. I like it when the song doesn't sound exactly like the original. I like when it goes off a little bit. And that's Vanilla Fudge got criticized for going off a little bit on Zeppelin cover. They did a whole thing for Zeppelin, but I thought it was brilliant because it was their version. It was Vanilla Fudge's version. So what do you how are you doing these covers? Are you doing it your style or
song by song? One of
right?
the fun as a keyboard player, sound designer, engineer is in terms of appreciating elements is I do like to give it some kind of twist.
Right.
I like to kind of recapture some of the same sounds because it's it's an element to celebrate. And I kind of also don't like it when there's a cover and it's sort of modernized sounds and it's like, man, I don't want to hear a song that was originally Hammond V3, Rhodes, and Mellotron now played with, some digital sparkly keyboard.
Oh, yeah.
That ruined it. So I like to use the vintage instruments, but give it a twist. Like we did a little E of Rush songs, and we did, let's say, Tom Sawyer. Although I actually have a version of a YYZ with I don't, it's not gonna be released on this mixtape, but this road trip thing, but with Keith Emerson and Steve Hackett on it.
Really? Oh my
Yeah,
gosh, that's
I have
awesome.
to, a lot of cool stuff. But
Yeah.
anyway, we did Tom Sawyer, and you know how there's that synth solo,
Yeah.
Well, so at the end I go off and do a full on keyboard solo based off that sound.
Yeah.
It's always something at least to offer, but sometimes, but not always. Well, actually, a good example would be Us and Them that I did with David London. Very different, and I love the original. You can't touch the original; it's just great. But this takes the song and does something different with it. And of course, Roger Waters just did Dark Side of the Moon Redux.
No. Yeah.
Some people like it, some people don't. I'm not sure. The jury's out for me. Mostly don't, but
me too.
Yeah. But it's a challenge. It's a challenge when you take an album perfect like that and so embedded in your brain. It's a risk if you're going to change it. But I think, and I'd love to get your opinion on it, our cover of Us and Them with the way that we changed it has something about it. There's something about it that's also a bit of fused with my style and maybe David's, like a little like more intense and passion driven as opposed to mellow, which is beautiful how it is. but it's just like to show that that song can be done in a different way and it still works. And that to me is the goal of a cover.
Right.
And I don't always achieve it. I don't, but that's what I want, is to be like, this has a point to exist. It's still serving the song. It's not like an inferior version that you're like, yeah, okay, well, I'd rather listen to the original. It's like, oh, okay. Like a long time ago with Kevin Gilbert, we did a version of Kashmir that was supposed to be on the Inconium record, which is an Atlantic Records official Led Zeppelin tribute album. And it got kicked off because of this funny story with them wanting him to do a duet with Cheryl and then telling them to fuck off. And then we were off the record. But Mark and Brian from KLOS, we were doing an interview with them and we had a tape of it, a DAT tape. And they're like, can we hear it? And they played it and like, can we have this? Can we play it? And like, yeah, take it. They made it a hit. I think one of the biggest hits from the record was something not on the record, at least in LA. They played it every hour. And it was like totally different. You take a song like Kashmir and you're just expecting that big, amazing John Bonham, right? And we didn't do it. We did the on the guitar instead of, with tablas. And then when the came in halfway through, you got to listen to it. Go search Kashmir Kevin Gilbert on YouTube. But when the drums come in, it's double time, like kind of like sort of like Abacab, actually, the drums remember. Anyway, Robert Plant heard it and told the guitar player, Corky, that he loved it. He loved that version. And other people, it's like shorter. There's some benefits to it. Like, it's like, okay, Kashmir is not as long. And plus, you're just not going to be able to do what they did anywhere near, let alone better than what they did. It's just great. So if you got another idea for the song and want to take some bold risks, that's what we did. And I think creatively, both for myself and from what I've heard from people that heard it, they're like, yeah, it works. It's cool. What a cool interpretation. But going back to your original question, I mean, it doesn't have to be, it just has to be good. It just has to be good. It could be similar or different, but either has to like serve the song in the end anyway, and not just be like gratuitous.
And I have heard some covers that kind of was a lot better than the original. So you never know.
We did Mark for Genesis. With Simon Collins and I did it. First thing we did together. And people love it. And Tony Banks wrote that. And that was another one of those little heroes validation. Don't need it, but I'll take it.
Yeah.
Actually secretly, like my little child, the young teenager in me is just over the moon, said to us that he said, loved how we did exactly what I just said, which is kept certain elements of the original. Didn't change it too much. He didn't want to change too much. He doesn't like when that happens, but changed it just enough to be like our own thing. And that was a thrill because, for him to say, and I think he said it was his favorite Genesis cover or one of his favorite that anyone's done. And I was like, oh, that's cool. That's not why we did it, but what a bonus.
Have you ever done Los Endos? I always liked Los Endos.
Love all the Genesis. Trespass to Abacab. After that, it's hit and miss. But we played with John Anderson once at a NAMM show, which is a music instrument festival convention. And after there was like this big show with mostly guitar players, Yngwie Malmsteen and Nuno Bettencourt, and John Anderson was there. And so he was gonna guest with. I put together a band to play with him. We did Long Distance Runaround. But I had Nick DiVirgilio, who played with me with Kevin, and he played with Genesis also. And he loves Genesis, and he plays in Big Big Train. And we were going to do Broadway Melody, which we did do, or Fly in the Windshield, and we were going to do Los Endos. Maybe we were going to do Squonk, actually. I forget. We had cut it from the set because Yngwie took up all the sound check time that we were going to rehearse it to jam with his band. So, but we did do Long Distance Runaround with John with no rehearsal, which was scary. But I'm like, there's no way we're not doing this. I don't care. Just do it. And it came out pretty good. And he was thrilled. And that was fun. And that, Well, that was another one of those bucket list moments because I love John Anderson.
Me too. He calls me Mr. Ray when he's on the show. Thank you, Mr. Ray. He's cool. I love John. I actually had a conversation with Chris Squire when they booted John out of the band, and I kind of got a little upset with Chris. He says, "Well, he was sick. We had to continue." And I said, "No, no, 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 no. You don't kick John Anderson out of the band. Come on, man." I couldn't help it because I'm a diehard Yes fan from the beginning. I mean, come on, listen to your fans. Dave, thank you, man. Thank you so much for being on the show. I'm looking forward to all the great new music. Part 2, also the cover, which is going to be great. We got to reconnect again when the cover comes out because I definitely want to talk about that album for sure.
That's coming soon. I'm going to try to get it for Christmas.
Yeah. I want to say very special thanks to the great Billy James. I've known Billy now for over 10 years. He's got me a lot of interviews. I thank him every day.
Awesome.
And from Glass Onion PR, he's a great dude. You can purchase the latest release by Dave Kerzner, Heartland Minds Volume 1, which is officially released, correct? It was released yesterday? Yep, on the 18th. I guess you can go to sonicelements.bandcamp.com. Is that the best place? /merchandise. That's the best place to buy the album, I guess.
/ merch. Or just not / anything. Yeah, you can go there, or you can go to davekerzner.com, which will also take. Or you can go to iTunes and Amazon. Like I said, I on the rest of the platforms, I just stream 6 songs from the album. There's 14 total.
Right.
It will also be out on CD, eventually vinyl. Not yet.
Okay. In what Blu-ray. Color? Vinyl's like in every color now.
What color do you think it's? It's not easy being green.
Exactly. You guys you're on your official website, of course, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, Bandcamp. I've got a list of all your studio albums as well, your live albums and your album working with Sonic Elements, Sound of Contact, Continuum, Arc of Life, and your work with other artists like Stephen Wilson and the McBroom sisters. And I got all that information for you, and we're going to plaster it all over the world. Dave, thank you so much, man. I really, really appreciate it. My best to you and your family, and we'll see you next time. Good luck, man.
All right. Thanks, man.
All right, Dave. Take care. Bye.